Welcome to the Landscape Leadership Podcast. My name is Chad Diller, and I'll be your host today. I'm the Director of Client Success here at Landscape Leadership. If you own or work at a landscape or lawn care company, you are in the right place. This is where we share our candid thoughts on sales and marketing for companies just like yours, so thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to talk about what does it take to create an awesome content marketing strategy at your lawn and landscape company. Now, if you've been around for any time and exposed to any type of marketing seminars or read content online or read articles, industry publications, you will have heard the word content marketing. This usually refers to writing blog articles on your website, which will do a number of things. Number one, it's going to improve your search engine optimization, how you show up in search results, and it can ultimately bring in local people in your area that are interested in your services. Now, this is something I'll say right out the gate that is completely oversimplified by a lot of companies. I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of lawn care and landscaping company owners, and they often have tried this, hired an agency, and have failed miserably. Now, that's not their fault because of desire and initiative. There are a lot of things that you have to get right on the content marketing side to be able to make this a complete success. I'm going to have an article in the show notes that I highlighted a couple years ago, the 8 biggest fails in content marketing in our industry. So I invite you to check that out. We're not going to dive into all of those different things today, but we're going to dive into a few of them that I'd like to highlight and maybe go into a little bit more depth. First off, it's really important when you create a content strategy to be very organized about it. This is simple to do. It can start with a simple Excel spreadsheet, and you can list the time that you want the articles to publish, the general topic of it, and any other details that you need. I try to plan this out for our clients at least 3 months in advance. You might not want to plan any more than that, though, because some things may shift in your business and you might have to pivot. So I'll explain what I mean in a minute about that. But you might want to focus on the short term, but don't focus less. So the last thing you want to do is be sitting down on a Monday saying, oh man, I have to write a blog article for this week and I have no idea what I'm going to write it about. And then things happen. You have clients to take care of, you have employee issues, you're out sick, vacation, and all of a sudden you're behind. So it's really important to plan ahead 3 months in advance. Then also, when you're planning out these articles and brainstorming for ideas, you want to make sure that you focus on the variety of different services that you provide. Some of you that are listening to this are landscape companies that provide maintenance services, design build, lawn care treatments, tree pruning, all kinds of things. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're a lawn care specialist and that's what you do as treatment plans. And you can break down within your content nature the different things that you want to talk about. So plan out on your spreadsheet a regular rotation of those things. So for the next 3 months, say you're a generalist company, you do a topic about design build, then one about maintenance, then one about lawn care, then one about tree pruning, and run in that cadence so that your people that subscribe or people that are seeing your content pushed out to social media and other places can see a variety of the things that you do. But you also want to make sure that you don't just focus on different subject nature as far as it relates to the services that you provide. You also want to make sure that you highlight multiple areas of what's considered a buyer's journey. Your customers will start off in a casual interest setting. Maybe they are becoming aware of a problem or becoming aware of a potential solution or improvement that they could make to their property, but they're not yet motivated to buy. They're in what we call the awareness stage. This would be like helping them to uncover problems and discover problems or learning about different solutions that they might not have thought about. And then they graduate from that and they move, and it can be in a variety of different speeds from the time they move from one stage to another, and they might shuffle back and forth. But they might move to the next stage, which is called a consideration stage. Now, the consideration stage, they're kind of in the buying cycle, but not yet. So they're asking more questions to start to narrow down their choices. It could be, one of the simplest ones to think about would be considering different material types. Say someone is looking to install a patio and they're considering natural stone versus paver patios. That's an example of consideration stage. They also might be learning how to consider and look from one company to another. Now, when things start to move to that area where they start making selections about who to work with, then that would be what we call the decision stage, where they have a high level of intent of getting ready to reach out to someone. They could have already done that, and they're still not secure yet in their decision with the person that maybe have given them estimates. And so this might be a stage in this decision stage where they still might have some intent to keep reaching out to other providers. Maybe they want to compare quotes, apples to apples, apples to oranges, and understand that. And so some of those topics that you would write in that stage are going to address different questions than they would say at the awareness stage at the beginning of this. So when you're going through your content calendar, make sure, like I said, number one, that you're considering different areas that you perform services, but also consider that your buyers are not all at the same place. And some articles will be right to that intent stage, and it'll be very, very particular with what you're writing about. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, but how do we come up with all these ideas? And I will tell you that this is probably the hardest thing about creating a content strategy that really works. In fact, it's the one every month that I take a big sigh when I have to sit down and come up with articles for about 15 or 16 clients that we haven't done before, and to have an interesting take or perspective. So if I can do this, you can do this. When I first started writing content for the company that I was at for probably 5 years, I think I ended up eventually at somewhere around 450 to 500 articles. Now, that's for one company, and we did a variety of different things. So it is a challenge, but it's possible. One of the things that I would tell you to consider doing is having brainstorming sessions with your team. And you will be surprised, the more your brain gets in tuned with coming up with content ideas, how often you miss them. And all of a sudden things will pop out and you'll think, that's a great article idea. So brainstorm as a team. Everybody will kind of come in from a different perspective and come up with a bunch of different ideas. And do you have FAQs, frequently asked questions? These are a great place to start. People might ask the question like, for example, how does crabgrass control really work? Another one on that topic would be like, but does it prevent all the crabgrass all year long? Am I going to get any? What do you do when that happens? There are gobs of all kinds of great content articles from the questions your prospective clients and your clients are asking. So keep something, maybe a tab in that content calendar that's called ideas, and give your team access to that. Make them passionate about this. Try to get them really involved. Tell them that you really need them, and tell them to put ideas on there when they can. Whenever you have an idea, jot it down. I know a lot of times I used to be driving around and I have a note on my phone, and I had an idea when I'm driving, and I would, tell my automated assistant on my phone to put that in that note, and that's a great way to keep track of content ideas. The other thing that you can do, and this is important, is to understand what is showing up in search results for these questions. This is a great resource. Just go into Google and start formulating the beginning of a question. Maybe throw one of those words about the subject nature in there, like paver, patios, or lawns, or weeds, or whatever it might be. Start typing in questions. You're going to see that Google will suggest a number of search results, different phrases that you can click on. Those are often great places to start for content. When you do a search for those things, then scroll to the bottom of the page and you can see on search results that people have also searched for this, that have searched for that original phrase. So those are great places to start. So start keeping a list and formulating some rough ideas of topics before you get to those fine-tuned titles that are catchy and fun, and you'll have a good amount of content for the next 3 months. Now, again, every month you might want to sit down and try to log another month's of material, but you want to make sure that you stay ahead in your content schedule. Another thing that you want to do is understand from a writing perspective what the tone should be of your articles. Now, I understand a lot of us are technical experts. I was a certified arborist and a landscape industry certified technician, and I nerded out on grass and diseases and, parts of a tree and all those types of things. But your clients often don't want that level of detail that you like to talk about with your industry peers. So it's really important when you create these articles to make sure that you write a balance of the technical information that they want to receive, but also make it very engaging and entertaining, conversational. Imagine if you were hosting someone at your house for a backyard barbecue and they started asking you questions about their tree. Now, we've all been there where someone goes into excruciating detail and bores you. Now, an article is a one-way conversation, so you can't take off the cues of the other person as they're reading it. But just be thinking ahead of, okay, am I going too in-depth here? Can I have a little bit more fun? Can I break things up? And can I help this become more meaningful to the reader? When you start writing, so when you get this schedule together, the content schedule, and you have all these great ideas and you know when you're going to write them, it's really important that you stay ahead with writing then as well. As I shared earlier, you don't want to get to the point where you're like, it's Monday, I need an article for this week, I need to wedge it in between things. People are calling me, people are stopping at my desk, they're asking me all these questions, and I'm completely annoyed. It will come out in your writing if you're writing that way. Or you'll have the temptation to try to get it done really quickly, make it too short, not make it interesting or engaging. And so what I would say is always be working on articles that you need maybe 3-4 weeks from now. So this means when you kick off your content strategy, write a few articles and don't publish them yet. Get them ready. So have 3 or 4 already sitting there in the can, ready to kind of come out, and then once a week, maybe publish an article to your company's blog. That way you don't have to feel the pressure. If something comes up, you can pivot really easily and push it off a day or two and stay ahead. But again, you're going to have to be really disciplined to just make sure that 3 to 4 week lead time doesn't turn into 3 to 4 days eventually. Now, let's talk about writing articles, because I think this is the actual, when we get down to it, this is probably the hardest thing. We'll often run into companies that will have done one of two things. They will have started trying to do this themselves, which is a noble effort, and I love that because it's important to hear your voice in your company's content, or they've hired an agency to do this. And I want to talk more to the people that are trying to do this on their own, just so you understand what is going to be involved to not oversimplify this. It's really good for you to have a champion of this effort, someone that cares more about it than everyone else does. And you will have that person. Maybe it's you as a company owner. Maybe it's your marketing person or a really great communicator on your sales team. That person will be the one that's probably going to do the majority of the writing. And they are going to be the point person to make sure you stay on schedule and to make sure that you edit these and they fine tune them and they're really good. Now, that person doesn't have to write all the content, because when we started out in the company that I work for, writing that content, I wrote 95% of it, and I started getting really burnt out after a couple years. We were doing 2 or 3 articles a week. That is a lot of content. And so what I started doing is pulling in other technical experts or other really great salespeople in our company to contribute. They had great voices. They had ways to communicate things that were fun and different than the way I would have communicated them. But I was still the point person. And so I would assign them an article, give them a deadline, follow up with them, make sure they were hitting their deadline, and then I'd edit their content when it came back. You might have a couple people that will do this, but don't force people that don't want to do this. It's really important that when you create this content team that you explain to them what's going to happen when they do this. Some people will just enjoy the process, but most people will want to gravitate to, this doesn't make me any money. I need to go sell these jobs, or I need to deal with this team member instead. It's important for them to understand that what happens eventually is this generates leads, this gets better customers for our company, and this means that your life will be more simple. You'll be able to answer questions. When people call you or email you with a question, you have an article that you've already written on it, and you can suggest that they read that instead of being on the phone with them for 30 minutes explaining it. Offer up the call, after they read the article if they still have questions, but this is a great way to motivate people to write for your company's blog. Now, you might have these multiple sources and you have to coordinate those things as that point person, but the one thing I will really caution you not to do is to have approval by committee on these articles. If you're going to assign somebody as the point person and it's not the company owner, give them authority to edit these articles and publish them. And if you're a company owner and it's hard for you to let go of that, you might not want to ever read them. I know that's hard to understand, but the problem is you get bogged down in those little details and you're going to burn them out with these constant changes. Now, maybe you need to. Maybe they don't understand the subject nature and you need to give them support to make sure that the technical things in this article are actually correct. And so if you do that, make sure that you're efficient with approvals. So for example, say they get an article finished, they send it to you, and you have 1 week to review this article, and that is it. You must give all of your notes in one pass back to the person that's editing the article so that they can finish this and get moving on with something else. The other thing you want to be careful not to neglect in your content strategy is writing for a search engine. Now, there's a balance of this. You don't want to do things that seem forced and weird, but the reason that you're doing blogging is not just for the benefit of your customers, because unless you deliver them to them directly, it's going to be hard for them to see the content. One of the things that many company owners are not understanding is they think that everybody's just going to get their content. They're going to subscribe. How many blogs do you subscribe to? That's a question I'd have. And the answer is probably not that many. So they might have a few questions, but they don't want to be getting a weekly tip. It doesn't happen a lot of times. The way people usually end up getting on blog articles is they search a question in a search engine. And so when you write your articles, you want a clever, fun title that's to the point about what you're writing about, but you also want to make sure that you're including that keyword phrase that they're probably searching for. Lawn services, crabgrass prevention, those types of things need to be in your title. And then there are a bunch of SEO elements within your article, like how many times you use different keyword phrases. Are they in the headings? Are they in the subheadings? Are the images in the article named with those words? There's a bunch of SEO elements you want to make sure that you don't neglect, because the last thing you want to do is spend hours and hours and hours all year long writing this content and then have it not show up in search results. So if that's something that you're not very good at, you can get some help from an agency to learn how to do that correctly, or maybe you can write the content and they can SEO optimize those articles for you. Then last off, what do you do with these articles? And this is a big thing that I see companies missing a lot. Remember, there's a lot of energy and resources and thought that go into creating this content. Just to publish it one time on your website isn't enough. If you've done your job right and you've created a great article and it's really optimized for search engine optimization, it might show up and you might get a lot of results and local traffic for that and even leads, but you need to make sure that you're going to use this. Think of it as an asset. A company buys a piece of equipment. They go and use it on one job and then they put it in the shop, never use it again. This content, a lot of this stuff that you're writing isn't just relevant this spring, it's relevant next spring and the following spring and so on and so forth. People are going to want to learn about this. And so one of the things you want to do is make sure you distribute this content and you use it a variety of places. One of the most obvious ways to do this is through social media. You want to share it to your Facebook page or your company LinkedIn page, or maybe even people that work within your company want to share it to their personal feed, like on LinkedIn or Facebook as well. Make sure you keep doing this year after year, because say your content strategy for the first year is to write one article a week. We have one post a week. Next year, you're going to have 2 posts a week that you can share. Take the old content and keep sharing it. This is something that I did with the company that I worked at, where I took content and kept recycling it to the point where we had something, after I did this 4 or 5 years of writing content, we had something every single day that I could share, another article. And people aren't going to see it the first time. They might not even see it the second spring. But when you keep pushing this content out there, it gets more eyes on it. Another thing you want to think about is, what do I want people to do when they get this content? And this goes back to kind of your formatting of your article and what action you want to have. So if it's that awareness stage content and you want people to do further research, give them a path somehow in the article, things they can click on, links, other recommended articles, even like a big block visual CTA of maybe a deeper guide that they can download to look at. And then in the bottom of the journey, down to the bottom of the funnel where you're getting to the point where you want them to request a consultation or get a free quote, have a really easy way for them to convert. The last thing you want to do is what I see a lot of times on blogs. You just write this article and there's nothing left to do. Someone reads the article, now they're left to like hunt around your website to find your consultation page and then do something. So prompt them. You can even do it halfway through the article. Ask them to do that. Now, there's a lot that goes into writing great articles, and writing is a hard part. Actually doing this over and over and over again. So I've done this a lot. It's something I kind of stumbled upon in the past that I learned to enjoy, but I know for a lot of you, writing is pretty intimidating. And you might be thinking, this whole process seems intimidating. So what I thought I'd do is just take a couple of minutes and let you peek behind the curtain with some of the things that we do here at Landscape Leadership by sharing a conversation that I recently had with one of our writers named Lindsey. Now, Lindsey has been in the writing industry for a long time, and specifically for the green industry. She's written for some major publications. You've probably read her articles, and some of you that are watching or listening to this may have actually even been featured in one of her articles. So here is a few minutes of my conversation with Lindsey. Hey, Lindsey, thanks for taking some time with me and our viewers and listeners today to talk a little bit about what it takes to write really great content in the green industry. So you and I have been working together for a long time now, probably about 5 years. Yeah. And you help out a lot with various clients that we work with all in the lawn and landscape industry. And I know that you also have a more interesting history of how you got started in the green industry with writing. So why don't you share briefly what that looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for reaching out about it. So I have known I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. And so I took a traditional path for someone that would want to go into a journalism career, and was the editor of the high school paper and worked at the college paper. I interned at some really cool magazines. I got to live in New York City for a while, and ultimately landed at Rodale Publishing after college, which is a health publication or health publisher of different magazines, including Backpacker, which I have the poster behind me. I worked there for a while, and ultimately moved down to the Philadelphia area and got a job at a different magazine down here. But it didn't take long for me to realize that working as a magazine editor, I wasn't getting to do the writing, which is what I was passionate about. So I went off on my own, decided to become a freelance writer, and told myself I'd give it a year, and if it didn't work out, I'd go back to working at a magazine. So when that happened, I reached out to every possible magazine I could, ones I had never heard of, and that was the time I reached out to Nicole, who at the time worked at an industry publication, and asked her if she'd just give me a chance, and she did. So that's sort of how I landed in the green industry. That was probably almost 14 or 15 years ago now, and I've been really lucky that from there it's spread into a lot of different opportunities, including meeting you and working for Landscape Leadership.
Yeah, and so our viewers and listeners know some of these industry publications you wrote for were Turf Magazine, Lawn and Landscape, just to name a few, right?
Yeah, and landscape management, and I've had the opportunity to be involved with some work with NALP. So it's been really great. I've been out to the show a few times, to GIE. So I've had a lot of different opportunities. I do write for some other industries, but of all the industries that I write for, I really mean it when I say I love the green industry the most. The people are just awesome. So.
Yeah. So you know the industry and you know writing, and a lot of the people that are watching or listening today, they're not in the same boat as you. Maybe they love writing. I was not a writer first. I fell in love with writing when I was doing marketing at a large company. And there were a few people on our team that liked writing, but many people don't. And some people are intimidated by it, the process, how you make something not just average, but great. So why don't you share just some details? What does your process look like from start to finish on creating a really great article?
I often find that people have a lot of great ideas and they just don't know how to get them onto paper or onto the computer in the form of an article. So that's what I love most about my job. My process always starts with an interview, with interviewing the source expert. So for the landscape leadership clients, it's about talking to maybe an owner or whoever they think is the expert on the article topic that we're working on. And I always try to make the process as easy as possible on the person I'm interviewing. I often find they feel really intimidated by it, but it's really more just a conversation, and they have so many great ideas in their head and sometimes just don't know how to get it out the way that they want. So that's my favorite part of the job, is taking their ideas and getting them into an article form.
So if you're writing a 600 to 1,000 word article, how long does your process take? Like, how long does that interview take? And then how long does it take to write something?
Yeah, I feel like I purposely try to keep the interviews under an hour if I can, and that's more for the client because they're busy and I don't want to take up too much of their time. So depending how many articles we're working on that month with that expert, it could be anywhere from like a 20-minute call to just get their ideas to an hour. And sometimes people love talking, and I always say I'd rather have more information than not enough. So that is always where it starts. Then it's sitting down. Sometimes I'm doing some extra research and it's piecing it all together. I often think of it like a puzzle because sometimes I have 3 computer screens here in front of me. I sometimes have research open in one and the interview notes in another. And putting together that puzzle, really it can take a whole range of from an hour to longer if it's a more in-depth blog and required a lot more research.
Yeah, and I would think because you do this so often, you're probably faster at this than most people that would be trying to do this for themselves.
Yeah, I've gotten down a system or almost when I do think of it like a puzzle. Even when I'm in the interview process, I'm like, oh, I know where that's going to fit. And I start thinking about how it's going to all come together.
Yeah. And we do a bit of work before that, trying to outline and kind of scope out and give you a direction to go for the
Yep.
article. So there's that time, maybe about 15, 20 minutes per article for an interview with a source. And then you could have anywhere from an hour. I think some people, depending how much they excruciatingly go over the writing and edit and edit and edit, you could be anywhere from an hour to 3, 4 hours. So all in all, the whole process from us to you to the client review and all that stuff could be somewhere around 3 to 5 or 6 hours per article, which is a
Yeah.
lot of time. You had touched on a little bit, and a lot of our viewers and listeners are interested in doing content marketing better or starting in it, and it's
Mhm.
intimidating to them. And they may be at a company and may or may not be an expert on a certain subject. Maybe they want to write. Maybe they
Right.
have a large team with, like you said, an owner, landscape designer, salespeople, people in
Mhm.
technical roles that are involved that they can go to, so to speak. They're kind of you. They're a writer and they want to put these pieces together. So, what do you think is it like to work with these different types of sources? What are some things that you run into that are challenges and some things that you particularly enjoy?
Really, I mean it when I say one of my favorite parts about the job is getting to talk to different people. So I love talking to everyone from the company owner to the people that are out in the field and they're seeing these things that we're writing about in the articles. Even though I work from home, I'm in a home office here, I've been this way for 15 years. I love that I get to talk to so many different exciting people and hearing and learning about what they're doing. So I do think company owners sometimes are intimidated and think they have to do it all, but I know when I'm interviewing sources, it's often all different people that they can delegate. Well, this person is the best to talk about that topic, and it works out great for them and for me. In terms of challenges, I was thinking a lot about what I'm challenged by. Obviously people's schedules and working around owners are busy, people out in the field are busy. But one of the nice things for me that I do work from home is that I can be flexible to work with their schedule. So I've scheduled calls before they start their workday, after the workday is over. So that usually ends up not being so much of a challenge. I think going in, sometimes people worried, well, when am I going to have time to do this? But it always works out. The other thing would be people ask me a lot, how do you make the articles different?
Mhm.
Obviously the green industry, there's only so many topics and many companies obviously face the same topics, but my process is always interviewing, like I said, starting with the source expert. And it's amazing how many different things they have to say from a source expert at another company. And then I start every article completely fresh from scratch. So it's pretty amazing to me how we could take the same topic but have very different articles for two companies.
Thanks. Yeah, that was my last question I was going to ask you is how do you keep things unique and how do you keep things fresh? And you answered it before I even got a chance to ask it, because that is a big challenge. I think it's even a challenge when you're working within your own company with an internal content team trying to write articles, is just how do you start articles off differently? How do you not say the same things about, say, a crabgrass prevention article that some other company would say? And you've done a really, really great job of just kind of harnessing the personality of each brand that you work with and the sources that you work with to have their voice come through in the articles in a unique way. So I really appreciate all that you do for our clients. It's a big task to write content, but you can do it. And hopefully Lindsey gave you a little bit of insight into what goes on in the background. Thanks a lot, Lindsey. I appreciate you coming and helping us today. Have a really great one.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed my conversation with Lindsey to understand what goes into writing content for the lawn and landscape industry. If you're going to kick off or improve the content strategy at your lawn and landscape company, it's important to not just be average. Be remarkable, be above average, be unique, and that requires a lot of thought and a lot of planning and multiple team members. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with one of your industry peers. And if you have any other questions about writing content in the green industry, feel free to drop us a line on the Landscape Leadership website or connect with me on social media. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a really great day.